Now we will start a second part. So here we are in with diastolic murmur of aortic regurgitation. So in this diagram you can see this is D. This D is now talking about aortic regurgitation. So you can see it is seen mainly in diastole. In systole it is normal. In diastole we are seeing it mainly. So hence the heading here is diastolic murmur of aortic regurgitation. So no abnormal sound is heard in systole, but there is in diastole the blood backflow from the aorta to the left ventricle. So now you can understand we are talking about aortic regurgitation, means the blood is moving back from the aorta into the left ventricle, so causing the blowing murmur because it is coming in a fast, aorta now is high pressure and left ventricle is low pressure, so it is coming rapidly, so it is giving a sound like blowing murmur of relatively high pitch with the swishing quality heard maximally over the left ventricle, and this results mainly from the turbulence of blood jetting backward from the aorta to the left ventricle. So aorta is a high pressure to the low pressure, that is our left ventricle. Mainly it is seen in diastole because diastole is a filling phase, especially in diastole there is low blood pressure, so because of this the blood start to regurgitate from back from aorta to the left ventricle. So now we are coming to the mitral regurgitation, that is our C. You can see mitral regurgitation. In systole you can see the murmur, right? But in diastole there is no murmur. So hence the name, the systolic murmur of mitral regurgitation. So think of this situation. Mitral regurgitation means the mitral valve is not closed, it is open during systole of ventricle. So now what happens? Just the blood from the ventricle goes back into the left atrium. So let's see the mitral valve to left atrium. So the blood is going back to the left atrium during systole, causing the increased frequency blowing swishing sound. So always remember, any kind of regurgitation the blood is trying to move backwards, so it always gives a blowing and swishing sound. So this is hard to hear directly at the left atrium, so it is transmitted to the chest wall mainly by left ventricle to the apex of the heart. So that's why, if you remember this area, that's why we hear the mitral area at the apex of the left ventricle, because it is not heard at the mitral valve or left atrium directly. So next let us see the diastolic murmur of mitral stenosis. Again come to the diagram. So you can see now we are in the mitral stenosis. Again you can see clearly in diastole only you can see some waves of murmur, but in systole it is clear. So hence the name, the diastolic murmur of mitral stenosis. So understand this situation. Mitral stenosis means that the mitral valve is completely closed. So what happens now? Back pressure increases in left atrium, you can guess now. So left atrium increase the pressure like 30 millimeters of mercury. Now the blood from the left atrium to left ventricle comes, and the sound heard in mitral stenosis are weak and of very low frequency. So in early part of diastole, left ventricle with stenosed valve has little blood flow in it. So remember, stenosed valve means only narrow pathway. So the left ventricle has only little blood flow in it, and its walls are flappy. That blood doesn't reverberate. So it doesn't reverberate back and forth between the walls of ventricles. Now you can see in the case of severe stenosis there is no murmur. Now you can see the diastole phase of stenosis means the ventricle is in diastole, means relaxing filling stage, but here the mitral stenosis is present, so there will be only low blood flow coming to the left ventricle. So no murmur may be heard during the first third of diastole, but then after the partial filling the ventricle has stretched enough for the blood to reverberate and low rumbling murmurs are begins. So see here in our mitral stenosis you can see here only, even in diastole you see low murmur because only slow blood flow is coming from atria to the ventricles. Now let us go into the phonocardiogram of valvular murmurs. So aortic stenosis lesion may cause the loudest murmur. So among all these murmurs now we are going to discuss aortic stenosis lesion cause the loudest murmur. So you can see here aortic stenosis cause the loudest murmur. You know what happens in aortic stenosis, right? And next coming to mitral stenosis lesion cause the weakest murmur. So you can see here mitral stenosis. So why in aortic stenosis you are getting the largest murmur? Mainly in the systole. This is systolic aortic stenosis, right? In systole as aortic valve is stenos. Now the left ventricle we need to put the lot of pressure against it, so because of this there is higher pressure, so that is causing a in systole the higher you can see waves. Whereas coming to in mitral stenosis, why it is the lowest, because in mitral stenosis there are two in diastole is filling phase, but here because of stenosis the blood is not able to come properly from the left atrium to the ventricle, hence you have seen this diastolic weak mitral stenosis. So this is very important. Highest systolic aortic stenosis has highest murmur, and diastolic mitral stenosis have lowest murmur. So next we are going to see, you can see phonocardiogram mainly shows how intensity of murmurs varies during different portions of systole and diastole. Yeah, that's what we have seen from before. And aortic stenosis along with mitral regurgitation murmurs occur only in systole. So this is very important. Only in systole you can see among all these graphs, only in systole you are seeing the aortic stenosis and also mitral regurgitation. And coming to aortic regurgitation and mitral stenosis, they only occur in diastole. So you can see here the aortic regurgitation and our mitral stenosis, both are occurring only in regurgitation. So this is the difference between these four types we have seen till now: aortic stenosis, mitral regurgitation, aortic regurgitation and mitral stenosis. So this is the difference we have seen. So now let us see somewhat aortic stenosis. So left ventricle contracting failed to empty. So in aortic stenosis, the left ventricle contracting, but it is failing to empty into the aorta, right? And next coming to aortic regurgitation. In regurgitation, what happens from aorta, the blood again comes back into the left ventricle. So in both cases, the net stroke volume output is decreased, because in both cases you can see the blood is not able to move into the aorta, so hence the cardiac output is decreased. Of course, stroke volume is also decreased. So hypertrophy of left ventricle, these are the compensatory reactions. Now let us see how this for this valvular disease how our body tries to compensate it. So mainly hypertrophy is one of the compensation, especially it takes place in left ventricle, increase in left ventricular workload. So this leads to left ventricular hypertrophy in both aortic stenosis and also regurgitation. So in regurgitation, even the size of the heart is increased. This is very important, because in regurgitation even the blood is coming now, so the heart size is also increased. But in stenosis, in aortic stenosis, only the hypertrophy is going on. So in stenosis, the left ventricle pressure is like 400 systolic peak, and in regurgitation it is less than 250 milliliter stroke volume output. So 3 to 4 fourths of blood return to the ventricle during diastole, and 1/4 flow through the aorta to the body. So only 1/4 is flowing to the body. Remaining 3/4 is always returning back to the left ventricle itself. So compensation too. So first compensation is hypertrophy of left ventricle. The second compensation is increase in blood volume. Why the blood volume is increasing? Let us see. Due to first reason is decrease in arterial pressure at the beginning. So in the beginning the arterial pressure is decreasing, so this is leading to increase in blood volume. Whenever the pressure is decreased means resistance is decreased, so dilated vessel is dilated, so increase in blood volume. And the second one is peripheral circulatory reflex induced by decreased pressure. So whenever there is decreased pressure, because of this the peripheral circulation reflexes are in. So both there is decrease in renal output and increase in blood volume. Renal output is decreased means less urine is excreted, so the salt and water are retained, so that there is increase in blood volume. And also RBC are increased due to slight hypoxia. There is slight hypoxia. Whenever there is hypoxia, our body tries to release erythropoietin from our kidney and try to increase more number of RBC. So due to slight hypoxia also there is increase in RBC in the case of compensation. So next coming to increase in blood volume. So increase in blood volume in turn increase venous return to the heart, and also left ventricle pump extra power required to um, overcome the abnormal pumping dynamics. So these are the compensations. That is the reason why we increase more blood volume, so that left ventricle can compensate beating against the stenosed aortic valve. Next coming to aortic valve lesions associated with decreased coronary blood flow. So when coronary blood flow is decreased, how the aortic valve lesions are formed, let us see now. So aortic stenosis, there is increased workload and oxygen consumption by left ventricle, so therefore there is increased coronary blood flow to deliver more oxygen. But high wall tension of ventricle later decreases the coronary flow during systole and in subendocardial vessels especially. So intraventricular diastolic pressure increases in stenosis, and increase in pressure cause the compression of inner layers of heart muscle, and in turn lead to decrease in coronary blood flow. Whenever there is compression, then the coronary blood flow is decreased, mainly in diastole. So severe stenosis causes ischemia of heart muscle, that is low blood supply to the heart, especially in severe stenosis. So in aortic regurgitation, intraventricular diastolic pressure increases and compress the inner layer of heart muscle, in turn decreasing coronary blood flow. So aortic diastolic pressure decreases during regurgitation and decrease coronary blood flow cause ischemia of heart muscle. So in any case, you see, whenever the coronary blood flow means the blood flow which is going to heart decrease, means of course it will lead to ischemia because low blood flow to the heart muscle. So this is, of course, it may also lead to hypoxia of that heart muscle because blood only carries oxygen. If there is low blood flow, of course it may also relate to the hypoxia. Next, let us see the eventual failure of left ventricle and development of pulmonary edema. So if this condition progress and it is progressing for longer time, finally it may lead to pulmonary edema and also heart failure, especially left heart failure. So in the beginning of stenosis or regurgitation, left ventricle adapts to increase in prevent load and abnormality circular function in resting person. But other than increase in work output required of left ventricle, therefore the stenosis or regurgitation occur before he or she has serious heart disease. So this stenosis or regurgitation is always associated with a person already with serious heart disease. Example like resting left ventricular systolic pressure is high as 200 millimeters of mercury in a person with stenosis, or left ventricular stroke volume output is increased, or double normal pressure with aortic regurgitation. So left ventricle can't keep up this work demand and finally it gets dilated. So because of dilation, cardiac output decreases because now left ventricle can't eject more blood out of the ventricle, and the blood trying to back up or dam up in the left atrium, in turn leading to dam up or back up also in the lungs. So finally left atrial pressure increases at atrial mean arterial pressure also increases about 25 to 40. If like this happens, it may lead to serious edema appearing in lungs. So now let us see the dynamics of mitral stenosis and regurgitation. So mainly in mitral stenosis, left atrium, in mitral stenosis, the blood is not able to move from the left atrium to the left ventricle because of stenosed valve, mitral valve. So in regurgitation, from left ventricle, the blood is moving to the left atrium in a backward direction, mainly during systole of a ventricle. So this reduces the net movement from left atrium to ventricle in both cases. So you can see in either mitral stenosis or in mitral regurgitation, either way you can see the ejection is decreased, the cardiac output is decreased in both cases. So pulmonary edema is the most in MB disease. In mitral valve disease, you can see mainly pulmonary edema because of this condition, because the cardiac output is decreased, so that the blood is back up in the left atrium in turn into the lungs. So you can see if the mean arterial pressure is about 25, edema can be lethal, and sometimes the pressure may be also greater, like about 40 millimeters of mercury. So because the lymph is large and rapidly carry fluid away from the body, away from the lungs. So next case, you can see here enlarged left atrium and atrial fibrillation. Whenever the left atrium is increased because of backup of pressure, because of regurgitation, because of any reason, if the left atrium pressure is increased and if it is completely filled, then the cardiac output to travel to them is hard to it, and also it may lead to circus movements. Because of that, the fibrillation may take place. So you can see here increase in left atrial pressure in mitral valve disease, mainly increase the size of left atrium, in turn also increase the distance of travel for the action potential, and also circus movements start forming, we already discussed this, and in late stages increase in stenosis, mainly atrial fibrillation occurs, reduces the pumping effectiveness of heart and cause a cardiac debility or failure. So next, coming to compensation in is early mitral valve disease. So in early mitral valve disease, how our heart compensate? Mainly by increasing the blood volume in mitral valvular disease. So because of decreased excretion of water, because of decreased excretion of water and salt. So whenever there is decrease in excretion, when a decrease in excretion means the retaining water and sodium, means of course increasing the blood volume. So this is the main reason we can increase the blood volume in mitral valve disease, and increasing blood volume in turn increases venous return, and left atrial pressure also increases, and blood dams up in the lungs all the way back to the pulmonary arterial constriction, leading to increase in systolic pulmonary pressure and increase in right ventricular pressure to as high as 60 millimeters, more than double the normal. So increase in pressure hypertrophy of right heart partially compensates for its increased workload. So it is compensating, but it is also in creating a problem, like you can see here, it is creating a problem in lungs, and also even though where pressure is increasing, it is also somewhat a problem. And you can see here the circulatory dynamics in exercise of valvular disease. So what happens if valvular disease patients do exercise? What happens to them? You can see increase in venous return, increase in symptoms of valvular disease, because I think in rest these people may not have that symptoms, but whenever they do exercise, the symptoms may come out. And in aortic valvulations, mainly acute left ventricular failure, because left ventricle needs to pump against the aorta. If aorta is blocked, left ventricle increases lot of pressure, so lead to failure. And next also lead to acute pulmonary edema because of backup of blood. And you can see the mitral disease. Because of mitral disease, there is damming of blood in lungs directly, so serious lethal pulmonary edema within just 10 minutes after exercise. And in mild or moderate cases of valvular disease, cardiac reserve may decrease, decreased cardiac output, muscle fatigue due to decreased blood flow to muscle. Muscle may fatigue due to. So you can see here, whenever there is decrease in cardiac reserve, nothing but there is decrease in cardiac output. So muscle fatigue due to decrease in blood flow to the muscles, because normally whenever we do exercise we need more blood vessels, so ventricle undergoes hypertrophy and leads to more ejection, more cardiac output. But here the cardiac output is low, even the blood flow to muscles is low there. So in this valvular patients, if they do exercise, their muscles fatigue very easily. And next you can see the hypertrophy of heart in valve disease. So increase in strength of contraction, of course increase in cardiac output and also increase in pressure. So increase in hypertrophy. So these are the causes which lead to increase in hypertrophy, like increase in strength of contraction, increase in cardiac output, increase in pressure, increase in metabolism. All this lead to increase in hypertrophy of a left ventricle mainly. So this hypertrophy occurs in valvular and congenital disease, causing the heart weigh as like 800 grams instead of normal 300 grams. So normally left ventricle, it should weight, or heart should weight like only 300 grams, but here it weight 800 grams. Because of this valvular and congenital diseases, the hypertrophy increases. And the most common cause of hypertrophy is hypertension. So hypertrophy, hypertrophy, hypertension. So extreme hypertrophy may also lead to sometimes heart failure. So the reasons, there are two reasons. The first reason is coronary vasculature can't increase as heart muscle increases. So this is we already discussed. Whenever the ventricle undergoes hypertrophy, there is decrease in coronary blood flow. So this is the main reason. And the second reason is fibrosis in muscle. So there may be fibrous tissues formed in the muscle, especially in some endocardial muscle. They adhere, so that because of this there is decrease in coronary blood flow, leading to ischemia. Whenever there is low blood flow, they may lead to ischemia. And also there is referred anginal pain, cardiac hypertrophy associated with valvular, less associated with congenital disease, and enlarge the heart, and also great risk of arrhythmias. So this also, because of higher hypertrophy, there is also great risk of arrhythmia, and there is also associated with valvular congenital enlarged heart disease. And finally they all lead to impair the cardiac function and sudden death because of fibrillation. So this person may also face the sudden death because of fibrillations and impair of cardiac function. So these are all the reasons for hypertrophy of heart in valvular disease. So this is how it is associated. So hypertrophy, maybe you get it by means of valvular. So they are having also greater risk of arrhythmias, and because of fibrillations there is sudden death involved in impair of cardiac function. So this is all a complete overview of our lesson from our chitin. So only we have one more last diagram to discuss here, that is here this one. So you can see the first heart sound and second heart sound. So the causes of first heart sound is mainly closure of AV valve, we already discussed in first part, and second heart sound closure of semilunar valves. Why duration of this 0.14, why this is 0.111 is they're taut and they're elastic, so they come fast back to the normal. So 0.14, and the frequency of first heart sound is